The first episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 just dropped, and it may have just changed Star Trek Discovery for the better. Star Trek has a history of tying together visual inconsistencies from previous shows into interesting stories. From Deep Space Nine's Trials and Tribble-ations, teasing a story about Klingon Cranial ridges, to Star Trek Enterprise going full out and explaining why we see no Ridged Klingons in the original series. Might Strange New Worlds be the next series to come up with an interesting story to explain away inconsistencies in other series, like Star Trek Discovery? Let's see what the latest episode tells us, particularly about a certain starship. Spoiler alert, be warned, we'll be talking about the first episode of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, The Broken Circle. So, spoilers are inbound, this has been your warning. Welcome to Trek Central! I'm your host Captain Jack, and let's get into it. Before we warp into this video, if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can of course follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. Okay, engage. In Strange New Worlds Season 2 Episode 1, The Broken Circle, the Enterprise is under the temporary command of Mr. Spock, and is sort of on an unofficial mission to stop a war from breaking out between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. It's big stakes for Spock's somewhat first mission as acting captain. After the Klingon Federation War of 2256 and 2257, the truce agreement between the two sovereign powers was not liked by all, especially those who profited from the war and wanted to return to said situation so they could provide resources to both sides of the war and profit from it. This was the planetary system Kaitar, which was located on a Klingon Federation border. On this planet, a group called the Broken Circle, hence the episode title, were repairing and rebuilding a Federation Crossfield-class starship. The same type of starship that the USS Discovery and USS Glenn were. However, this one looks different from the previous Crossfield classes we've seen in Star Trek Discovery. So what does that mean?
Reading a launch from the surface. It's a ship.
On screen.
That's one of ours. Crossfield-class, I think.
What this Crossfield class means has been widely debated by the community since the release of the episode. Lieutenant Jenna Mitchell is the one who confirms the ship as a Crossfield class, but ends with, I guess. This throws into doubt whether this is actually a Crossfield or not, or it could be a kitbash. The intent of this episode seems to be the ship was cobbled together from what the Broken Circle could find, to make a fake Federation starship in order to attack the Klingon ship and restart the Federation war. This is supported by the fact the interior scenes of the ship are kind of a mismatch of ship interiors from Star Trek Discovery and the Crossfield class, USS Discovery, and from Strange New Worlds and the Constitution class, USS Enterprise. As we can tell, the saucer is definitely Crossfield class. However, it has a small secondary structure behind the saucer which attaches to the nacelle pylons, which in turn meet and connect to a deflected dish. This secondary structure housed the impulse engines in a very NX-01 style, with the nacelles and deflector dish being very Constitution class in style. This is literally a kitbash ship both in-universe and out-of-universe, with the VFX team just mocking up a ship for the episode for the sake of argument. However, this seems very apparent, so why is there such a debate around this ship? Well, for that we have to look at the very beginning of the episode. This very not only changes what is in the ship, but also what it means for the Discovery and Star Trek Discovery. At the very beginning of the episode, we're at Starbase 1, and we see a collection of different ships docked at the station. We of course see the Constitution class USS Enterprise, an Archer-type ship, which was a small runabout-sized starship from the small mission seen in Season 1's first episode, and a Farragut-type starship, which the USS Farragut belongs to, and James T. Kirk is currently serving upon as lieutenant. Hopefully we'll see that ship later on in Season 2. However, also in this array of ships was a Crossfield-class starship in the same configuration that we see later in the episode built by the Broken Circle. Obviously this is a reuse of the asset to flesh out a fleet during this period, but we have seen Discovery-era starships in Strange New Worlds, with a Shepard class in Season 1. There are around 10 different screen and era-appropriate ships they could use from Discovery in Strange New Worlds. Interesting note, this ship is also upside down docked at Starbase 1. Eh? So, with a Crossfield-class ship in this weird configuration at Starbase 1, at the beginning of the episode, what does it mean? Because it's kind of confusing. It would mean that this style of Crossfield is a design by Starfleet, which itself has numerous implications. The first implication is that this is the original look of the Crossfield class of starships. This of course has a big implication for the Discovery and the USS Glenn. The USS Discovery and USS Glenn were basically prototype research ships with two Federation astromycologists working respectively on these ships. They were working on projects related to Prototaxis stellaratori, a species of fungus and its use in propulsion and transportation. They were used by Drs. Stamets and Strahl. With the onset of the Federation Klingon War in 2256, they were co-opted by Starfleet, given a commission, and tasked to work on the development of new propulsion systems based on their astromycological research. They were set to work on two Crossfield-class vessels, which were specifically modified to accommodate the designs on a displacement-activated spore hub drive, and asked to research how to make these jumps with the spore drive more efficient, consistent, and to go further distances to get an advantage over the Klingon ships. This would explain why the Glenn and Discovery had a different style secondary hull than the original design of the Crossfield. If the Crossfield in this episode is the original design, these ships both needed large secondary hulls for their use in experiments on the spore drive. The USS Glenn needed large storage space with its vast storage of dried mushrooms aboard for use. The Discovery itself would need a large cultivation bay to grow said fungi to use. This is somewhat supported by one of the convicts in Discovery Season 1, when coming aboard the ship, describing it as fresh off the assembly line, with these Crossfield classes getting newer secondary hulls. Another point is the Discovery's registry is NCC 1031, with the USS Glenn being NCC 1030. These numbers are much lower than the Enterprise's NCC 1701. We know that the Enterprise has been active since at least 2245, when it was launched under then Captain, now Admiral, Robert April, which was a whole decade before the USS Discovery, NCC 1031, was, quote, fresh off the assembly line. If the USS Discovery and USS Glenn were just ships that were pulled from active service and refitted for the purpose of this astromycological research project, this would finally make their registries actually make more sense, with what we know about Starship registries in Star Trek. In the cave where the Crossfield and KJR was being rebuilt, we can see the ship did not have a negative space in its hull. The negative space in the Discovery was to assist with the excess energy cavitation, along with the concentric rings on the source of being allowed to spin for its use in the spore drive. Yes, we all remember the spinny ship. Some of our first looks of the Discovery did not have this negative space. So at first, I thought this would actually make the short story canon in a sense, if this Broken Circle Crossfield ship did also not have the negative space in its saucer. However, when the Broken Circle's Crossfield is flying through the planetary iron ring on KJR, we see clearly that it does have a negative space in the saucer. This is probably a VFX issue, similar to how some Ross-class ships in Star Trek Picard did not have pylons attaching their nacelles. The issues do happen, they are kind of funny, but it's just a thing. For all we know, the negative space in the Broken Circle's Crossfield came about when it launched through the cave system. Another scenario to explain the Crossfield at Starbase 1 is this is a new Crossfield-class design. As we know, the events of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, as well as the Spore Drive, were completely classified by Starfleet Command. The cover-up story was that the USS Discovery was destroyed in an advanced warp trial near the planet of Zahir. The Crossfield class itself was not classified, as we see images of this class in Star Trek Prodigy. One of Starfleet, to further sell the lie, asked for a complete overhaul of the Crossfield class to avoid the issue of thermal damaging from a fake advanced warp trial. Other Crossfield classes could have their secondary hull and nacelles removed and fitted with brand new secondary structures, deflectors, and nacelles. This could work, explaining why the design of the newer Crossfield is present at Starbase 1, and how everything fits together. It would mean that KJR got their hands on the ship after the Klingon War, somehow, but it can still work if we put these bits together. The big question that is left, and that is why it's important on how it fits into the story. The intent of the episode seems to be that it's just a Frankenship, bolted together from different plans to restart the war. This all comes down to visual continuity, which is a big can of worms in Star Trek, and we're not going to go near it. Just joking, we are. A big issue that fans had with Star Trek Discovery was the apparent change in visual continuity from what we expected in the 23rd century. Many aspects of the show, artistically from alien designs to ship designs, felt very alien to fans that had grown up with the original series. Strange New Worlds, both in its time period and as a franchise show, has the opportunity to connect and recontextualize what came before and make things work together. Trek has done this numerous times throughout the past, it's nothing new. In the original series, the Klingons were just smooth four-headed people. When we get to the motion picture, however, they begin to have four-headed ridges, so there is an example of some visual inconsistencies. Are we meant to believe this is the same species, and they didn't just have a budget to show Klingons how they wanted to in the original series? What further supported this idea that the Klingons like Kor, Kang and Koloth, which originally showed up with smooth foreheads in the original series, actually had rigid foreheads seen in Deep Space Nine? This can be one way you can deal with it, but Star Trek wanted to maintain some form of visual continuity. However, Deep Space Nine went the other way and we got Trials and Tribble-ations. The episode said to the screen, smooth foreheads were how Klingons looked in the 23rd century, and Klingons don't want to talk about what happened with outsiders.
They are Klingons. And it is a long story.
What happened? Some kind of genetic engineering? A viral mutation?
We do not discuss it with outsiders.
So we not only get the tying together disparate visuals, but we get a story along with it, and something happened. Just to get into Star Trek Enterprise, where they establish a Klingon augment virus, a virus which would kind of ravage a good percentage of the Klingon people and dissolve their forehead structure. The Klingon augment virus did not infect the entire Empire, which is presumably why we meet mostly cranial Ridged Klingons in Star Trek Discovery. Antak, a Klingon scientist, feared that those without cranial ridges might be discriminated against in the Klingon Empire.
I thought you were committed to saving lives.
It is more honorable to give one's life to medical research than to die for no purpose.
That choice is not ours to make.
Proceed.
This could be why we don't see them during the Klingon Federation War, with smooth foreheaded Klingons not allowed to serve as warriors in the Empire. However, this is all assumption. Strange New Worlds has had the opportunity to use these visual inconsistencies to make great stories. Perhaps we could see a Klingon coup, with smooth-headed Klingons rising up and taking command of the Empire, allowing them to serve in the military, thus connecting with the original series in just a few years' time. And if we return to Discovery in the Crossfield-class, Strange New Worlds again has had the opportunity to use visual inconsistencies to inform cool stories. Discovery did this with its ship designs, and the designs in Season 1 for the Klingon ships represented from a fractured Klingon Empire and the introduction of a D7 in Season 2. It was basically to show the newly reforged Klingon Empire. Strange New Worlds can do this with Starfleet ship design. It could tell the stories about why ships don't look like the original series. Perhaps later seasons will have the Enterprise outfitted with a newer hull that is white, an advancement in hull technology, and they absorb more energy from energy weapons or something. You can make an excuse to solve it, it's easily done. Ultimately, Strange New Worlds does not have to do this, but when stories in a large history of shows find a way to not only tell great stories, but connect with their legacy while moving forward, it's always a good thing. Many people will call these inconsistencies plot holes. Well, we'll just call them stories that haven't been told yet. Returning to the Crossfield-class, we ask you, what is your explanation for its appearance? Do you agree that any of these answers make sense? Is it an original series design, newer design to help classify information, or just a fancy VFX error? Or do you have a whole different story in mind to help explain this? Let us know in the comment section below. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.